Everything you need to know about the New Orleans Saints quarterback battle before training camp. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here after further review. Matt Moscona, another day, another conversation about Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener. Matt has a couple shoes on his desk. He's replaced the Bud Light cans with sneakers. Interesting, controversial yet brave decision. Let's get right into the video.
2 weeks away from the start of Saints training camp. Kat Terrell, good enough to join us for a couple of minutes now. Kat, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm about to go on vacation in a few days. One last week off before training camp. Like you said, I can't believe it's almost.
This, I mean, ladies and gentlemen, we are close. Like, we're 20 days away. Not 20 days. Yeah, probably about 20 days away from, like, legitimate pad-on-pad action, legit-ish games. I mean, it's about to heat up. This is really kind of the last couple of weeks of nothing before we're getting heavy doses of the NFL.
Here, it's kind of crazy.
So is the vacation out west and you're just staying there in California?
No, it's a staycation, basically meaning I'm going to turn my brain off and not think about football for 5 days.
That's awesome.
Impossible. How can you even do it?
I don't know if that's possible, but I'm going to try.
You can pull it off. Binge on Netflix and really good whiskey. By the way, what's your favorite whiskey?
I'm showing restraint, ladies and gentlemen.
It's still Weller 12, Matt.
Hey!
I haven't changed.
See, Kat and I have this great synergy when it comes to Weller 12. She's got great taste. What can I say?
It's the best.
Are you? It really is. Are you? You had a great piece up about the kind of evaluating the quarterback room. What? Real quick, just what was the impetus to do that over the weekend?
I thought about that piece.
By the way, impetus means what started that. What was the creation, the catalyst for that idea?
For a couple of weeks. I think that it's just interesting to me kind of how much Jake Haener has come out swinging, I guess. For, lack of a better term, I think Jake Haener has had a really great start to the offseason. For whatever reason, I don't know if he, was inspired by them drafting someone 1 year after he was drafted, or if it's just the natural progression.
It's probably a little bit of both. And that is something that's been so good about this situation, is that you have good old-fashioned competition without the added pressure of like, hey, one of you are getting cut, or hey, if you don't win this out, you are getting traded. Like that. That's not the situation. This is just good old-fashioned. You compete against you. They're relatively equal as far as like age and as far as contracts and as far as all that. Obviously, Rattler does have the advantage being drafted a year later than Haener, but at the end of the day, it's not that big of an advantage. So this is as close as you can get to just two guys going out there every single day, every single rep, every single workout, every single morning. I mean, when you really think about it, like if you think about Haener, them and Rattler, but them draft. I mean, Rattler's a little different because he is a tried and true rookie, so he should be motivated anyways. But if you're Haener now, every workout you do, every morning when you head to the facility, if you want to get there early, like you want to win every single day, you want to win every single opportunity to be the backup quarterback. So if nothing else, Spencer Rattler in this competition is going to push Jake Haener to whatever his peak is, whatever his highest possible level is. And that's, even if nothing comes of it, that opportunity is fantastic that the Saints have that. And with Carr as the veteran, like Carr being able to also tutor these guys. It's not like Carr is 27 himself and Carr is worried about his own peak and worried about his career or getting his career to a certain level. Carr's been there. So while this competition is happening, you also fold in Derek Carr's tutelage to Haener and Rattler.
But I think it makes it exciting because I kept saying this all summer. So few teams do what the Saints are doing right now. Teams just don't like to draft quarterbacks back-to-back. So after all these years of the Saints having veteran backups, I think it's really kind of fun to look at these young quarterbacks just kind of duking it out for the backup role. And I think that that's going to be something to watch for the next month.
Do you think we see either of those guys? I guess maybe Kat's an unfair question. I would say, do you think we see either Haener or Rattler this year? but it would probably be only for injury. Yeah.
Yeah, why the hell would we see why would we see Haener or Rattler this year? Derek Carr is not getting benched. Okay, if he gets hurt, he gets hurt. You can't factor that in. But we are not seeing Jake Haener. We are not seeing Spencer Rattler outside of injury.
I mean, I would think so, because the way I look at it is that the Saints invested all this money in Derek Carr. Carr is Dennis Allen's guy. So basically, these two were tied together. So if Dennis Allen decides to bench Carr, I don't know. I mean, I think that would be a really big deal, right?
Carr and Allen are definitely tied together. I mean, Carr is Allen's guy. Allen is Carr's guy. Allen brought Carr here to basically save his job. And Allen is already on a hot seat. So Loomis is not going to give Allen the chance to develop another quarterback or the chance to go sign another quarterback or any of that. If Carr fails, that means the Saints fail. If the Saints fail, Allen fails. That's how that's going to go. And then Haener or Rattler or whoever else will be someone else's problem. But yeah, Allen and Carr are tied together. Thus, Allen's not going to bench Carr.
And even last year when Carr was injured, he never stopped playing. He played every game. And if they were ever going to sit him for injury, it should have been that Tampa game, and they didn't do it.
Agreed.
So I kind of feel like they're going to stick with him no matter what. We'll see what happens. But, unless there's an injury, I'd be surprised to see either one. But, honestly, in December, if the season's not going well, I guess we'll see what happens then. But I kind of feel like we're going to see Carr all year.
Yeah. Kat, do you think how many quarterbacks do they keep on the roster?
I think they keep 3.
Yeah. And so there's obviously the emergency quarterback that you keep on game day we know about, but could you explain the significance of keeping a third quarterback on the roster just because of what that means for roster limits and everything?
Well, it's something the Saints have often done, because depending on how you look at Taysom Hill, I guess. There were a lot of years when Drew Brees was playing where they kept 2 because they didn't need a third one. Then I feel like ever since Taysom Hill's come along, around that time period, they've kept 3 a lot because Hill is a quarterback, but not really a quarterback. So, they've kind of been able to utilize the roster spot for him. And if you look at it that way, they'd be keeping 4 quarterbacks, because technically he is a quarterback. It is a pretty big deal, though, if they're going to keep 3.
So let me explain this. I can't believe we're talking about roster designation. Like, who cares? But the way that the Saints would manipulate it was they would carry 3 quarterbacks on the roster. Hill would be the third. Hill is not actually a quarterback. So then you basically free up a roster spot. You get a free roster spot because you have Taysom Hill at quarterback, even though he's playing all this other stuff. So then you can bring on another defensive back or something that you wouldn't be able to do, because if you were actually rostering a third quarterback and Taysom Hill, you would lose the roster spot. So Taysom was kind of sort of allowing for a free roster spot.
And 2 of them are very young, and you don't expect to play them. That is really interesting, and it's not something teams do a lot because roster spots are so precious. However, I just would be surprised.
I think you carry 3. You carry, if it is Haener and Rattler, which looks like it's going to be, you carry Carr, Haener, and Rattler. The reason you don't carry 2 is because you don't, unless you are okay with Taysom being your backup to the backup on game day. The reason you don't do just 2 is because there is still an unknown with Haener and Rattler because they're so young. So let's say Carr gets hurt. Let's say you only have 2. Let's say Carr gets hurt, Haener goes out there. Let's say Haener is absolutely deer in the headlights, absolutely not ready for the moment, absolutely not there. You want to get him out of the game. Like, you don't want to just feed him to the wolves, let him fail, and just completely destroy his development. With older veteran quarterbacks, you don't have to worry about that, right? So if it was Carr, Peterman, Haener, Carr goes down, you put Peterman in, nothing. There's no risk. There is a risk to putting Jake Haener in. There is a risk to putting Rattler in. And I'm not saying this would happen, but there's a possibility with a young quarterback. We saw it with Nick Mullins. We saw it with Jaron Hall last year. Isn't that his name? I'm pretty sure it's Jaron Hall for the Vikings, where the Vikings go with Hall, and they start the game with Hall, and he is completely out of his element. Like, you could tell from the start, he is completely he is not available. Like, he is deer in the headlights. He can barely make the throws. It's getting dangerous for him to be out there, and so the Vikings had to get him off the field. Like, they had to get him off for his own safety. We've seen that with Nick Mullins a few times, and Nick Mullins is who they ended up replacing it with. But we saw that a few times with Nick Mullins with San Francisco in some games. In a game in San Francisco where he was just getting absolutely crucified, and it was like they have to get him out of the game before it gets dangerous.
Prize, say Haener wins his backup job. Well, they're not gonna cut Rattler, right? Like, they're not gonna cut they're not gonna cut him right after they drafted him.
Right.
And I don't think they would cut Haener either. Like, I think that you want to develop both of them, but that's what makes football nerds like me so curious to watch how this all plays out, because I don't really think that you obviously don't sneak Rattler through waivers. Could you get Haener through waivers? Maybe, because another team would have to put him on their 53, which is asking a lot when they have their own quarterbacks they're developing. But I don't know if they'd want to take that chance with how good he's looked so far.
I mean, Kat, didn't the Saints effectively try to do that with Ian Book and it bit him?
Ian Book sucked. Ian Book, same thing I'm talking about, where he got a chance to play. Deer in the headlights was absolutely terrible, and that was it. But Ian Book was absolutely horrible. And the Saints, I mean, that was just a whiff. He was not the guy. This Nick Mullins game is I got to look it up. I got to look up which game it was. Can't find it. I'm looking up Nick Mullins and stuff. None of the games are really sticking out, but there was a game, I'm pretty sure it was in San Francisco, where Mullins was on prime time and he was getting absolutely destroyed. Could have been this game. I don't think he threw 3 touchdowns, though. Could have been the Rams game where he gets sacked, threw 3 picks. But it was just picks and pick sixes, and it was ugly. Ugly. Yeah, Nick Mullins, shout out, Southern Miss, to the top.
I'm trying to remember. I kind of feel like they had moved on at that point. And maybe it's possible that was.
Yeah, I'm the Ian Book thing. Like, I don't think they ever wanted to keep Ian Book. They were ready to be done with Ian Book. They had seen enough from Ian Book. That the chapter was closed, if you will.
What they're trying to do, I think Book unfortunately just had the worst luck. He started in a game where there was, I think, 20 players out and kind of thrown in there.
Yeah. Obviously
didn't play well. I mean, because who is going to play well in that situation? And then I felt like after that, it was kind of all downhill. I think
But that's exactly what happens. A young quarterback goes into a situation they were not ready to be in, or a bad situation or whatever. They get destroyed. And then it's all downhill from there. That's exactly the risk you run, getting a young quarterback out there before they are ready.
Is with the Eagles now, or was. I'm not sure if he still is.
The Saints waived him, and my thought, Kat, was always they were trying to give him a clear waiver, sign him back to the practice squad because they didn't want to just punt on a 4th round pick, and, and the Eagles scooped him up.
Yeah, he's actually with the Chiefs now.
Wow.
I was wrong.
Unbelievable, he's still on a roster.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible. He has been on practice squad the last 2 years. Wow, I'm kind of behind on Ian Book's.
You get a pass on former Saints bust draft picks. It's okay. You don't have to know where they all are. Where were you when? Where are they now?
I'm telling you this right now. This is where we are in the summer. This is where we are in the football landscape. We're talking about whiskey. We're talking about roster designations. We're talking about Ian Book.
Kat Terrell's with us, ESPN.com. She's on Twitter at Kat_Terrell. Give her a follow. Hey, is Nathan Peterman has no shot of making this team, right? This is just a camp arm?
Yeah, it doesn't look like it.
Yeah, that wouldn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
I think that Peterman is a guy they might want to keep around on the practice squad.
Peterman is basically another quarterback coach right now. He's another guy to just kind of help the young guys along. But, yeah, with Rattler and Haener both performing well, no reason to have Peterman. Now, if Haener or Rattler would have been horrible in camp, then you probably keep Peterman and you try and figure out what you're going to do with the other two.
If they want that veteran voice, because he's worked with Carr, he's worked with some of the Saints coaches. That would make sense to me because, no one's going to, I mean, no offense, but no one's going to be running to take him away. So maybe he sticks around in some capacity, but we kind of just overlook him totally. Sorry Nate Peterman. But no, I don't see any path to him making the roster because right now he barely gets any reps. They basically give him one or two, and then they give him to the other quarterbacks. So,
Kat, it's interesting because for years Drew Brees always wanted that veteran backup, or the guy that he could trust, he could sit on the bench and talk to. We saw Chase Daniel do that for years. McCown was that guy for years. Didn't we see Mark Brunell at one point was backup? So do you have a strong feeling one way or another about that? Should a team have its backup be a young guy they're developing, or should it be a resource, like a veteran asset to the starter?
I think it's up to the starter. I think when you have a franchise quarterback like Breeze, I think you ask him, what do you want? Do you want young guys behind you that you can mentor and you can kind of, whatever? Or do you want a guy you're friends with? Do you want a guy that you like to travel with, you like to talk to? Do you want someone that can help break down stuff on the sidelines? Do you want someone that can help you break down plays in the film room? What do you want? When you have someone like Breeze or Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or whatever, it's better to give them a guy that they like, that they're friends with, and that they can spend time with breaking down games and looking at stuff on the sidelines. We always see on the sidelines, quarterback comes out, goes to the sideline, him and the backup and the quarterback coach are looking at the iPads or the Microsoft Surfaces, whatever. And if that's what they want, that's what they want. Now, if you don't have a franchise quarterback, who the hell cares? If you don't have that, you're not going to ask Sam Darnold, hey, man, what do you want? Who cares, right? Sam Darnold's lucky to have a job. So at that point, you're just trying to make the roster better. So it's a little bit of a depends on the situation. If you have Peyton Manning, you're not going to go be like, well, let's go develop a guy behind him if Peyton would rather have whoever to bounce ideas off of or to bounce plays off of.
Usually,
it's kind of like a caddy in golf. If you have a franchise quarterback, it's like you let that guy pick their caddy.
Usually I think if you can spare the roster spots, it's really nice to have a young guy and a veteran backup behind your starting quarterback. But, some teams just can't afford that roster spot, and some teams think that it's a necessity. So it really depends on what's going on with the team, and I'm actually working on my 53-man roster projection right now.
If you're the Chiefs, there's no reason to have a young guy on the roster. It sounds cool that you're developing a quarterback or whatever, but just go get Patrick Mahomes' two best friends. Go get the two best film watchers out there. Two best, whoever the best film watching backup veteran quarterbacks are, get them for Patrick Mahomes, or get one of them and just carry two quarterbacks. Because if Mahomes goes down, the season's over. Who cares, right? So very different for different situations, but that's what I would do. You also have to factor in, and some teams do this, where you factor in for a practice squad or whatever, you do want people on the roster who mimic other people in your division. So if you're the Bengals, it may behoove you to keep someone on the roster that can be Lamar Jackson in training camp or can be Lamar Jackson in practice. I know sometimes wide receivers will step in, running backs will step in to mimic some of that. I know that was big whenever the Wildcat was a thing. They would, obviously if you're facing Lamar Jackson, then your defense going up against Jake Haener doesn't make any sense, right? You're not, that's not work. That's not going to work. So sometimes you want to have someone on the roster that can do that too. That's a bit more of a niche case.
But I think ideally, you kind of have a mix of all three of those.
Give us a little bit of a spoiler. What's the toughest decision there on your 53-man roster spot?
Let me look. I was doing it earlier this week, and then I paused it. What is the tough one? I think that offensive line, the back of the offensive line is often tough because this year it's so...
Yeah, there's so much of an unknown. It's kind of like a bullpen in baseball where it's some of these guys, it's who the hell is my backup to the backup middle reliever? Everything's so razor thin as far as who's getting cut, who's not, especially with an offensive line where the starters aren't even set. So there's some players who you may think he might not even make the roster. Boom, all of a sudden he's starting at left guard. So with a very influx offensive line, I could see where that would be controversial.
So kind of chaotic. There's so many spots up for grabs, and that is going to be a big storyline day one of training camp. You know, what happens to Ryan Ramczyk?
Mm-hmm.
There's Andres Pete. So probably the back of the offensive line, maybe the last defensive back spot, and then maybe like the last linebacker spot. You know, usually with any 53-man roster, you could probably name 47 players in a span of minutes, and then it's those last spots that you're always trying to figure out.
Because it's the guys who aren't doing much, and that is hard because the guys who don't do much to the public eye, but those are the guys that the team, like that's where a lot of the variables get factored in of who's being kept. That's where a guy might get kept because he's a good locker room guy. A guy might get kept because he's an energy guy, or he can break down tape really well, or he's the friends with whoever, or like you never know those weird variables of why people get kept on roster.
And a lot of it comes down to special teams with all of the new rules and stuff.
Yeah, the new rules too. Great point. New rules. You have to factor them in with who's being kept where. Again, like some people get kept because it's like, hey, this guy's on the roster because he's the greatest onside kick returner in history. But if you're just grading linebackers, it's like, why would this guy be on the roster? He hadn't made a tackle in 5 years. But he's taken up a linebacker spot, but he's actually utilized somewhere else. You know, like, so that's where it gets a little tricky.
It's kind of fair game now. Like everything's kind of changed as to how they make up special teams and who's on the special teams unit. So I think that's going to give a shot for maybe players that wouldn't have made the team before to possibly
that makes sense.
You know.
All right, last thing for you. Tom, always appreciate it. Kat Terrell, before she goes on vacation, ESPN.com. Do you have any reason for optimism that this could be a playoff team?
Yes, because we were a playoff team last year if it wasn't for a tiebreaker. Because we play in a very weak division. Because we were 9-8 last year with one of the worst situations possible. Alvin Kamara suspended, Marshawn Lattimore hurt, Cam Jordan hurt, Pete Carmichael inside of the building. All of that, Derek Carr's first year. We completely revamped the offensive staff. Alvin Kamara's not on suspension. Marshawn Lattimore's healthy. Cam Jordan's healthy. We get Talise Fuaga. Last year, Ryan Ramczyk misses, 6-7 games. Even when he played, what was he playing on? Obviously not a very good knee. Trevor Penning was all over the damn place. So all the problems last year, we still go 9-8. All the problems last year, we still are almost a division champion / playoff team if it wasn't for a tiebreaker. At the end of the year, we absolutely dog-walked Tampa. We absolutely dog-walked Atlanta. We absolutely dog-walked Carolina. They're all in the division. So to win the division means to make the playoffs. Thus, it is time to be optimistic about making the playoffs.
I was actually randomly thinking about that earlier today because I think about football even when I'm not trying to think about football. I think that my main concern is that I said this last year, but it's worse 1 year on. You know, this is a team that for a lot of years now has kind of relied on its defense. Well, when you look at the stars of the defense, a lot of them are 1 year older. They're not getting any younger. So are you going to get anything out of Cam Jordan? What are you going to get?
You didn't get anything out of Cam Jordan last year. Oh, and good news, you have Chase Young now. So let's say Cam Jordan doesn't play at all. And let's say your edge rushers are Carl Granderson and Chase Young. Okay, cool. Demario Davis, he was one of the best linebackers in the NFL last year. Do I think he's going to fall off just because we're a year later? No, I would just be guessing. So Tyrann Mathieu, one of the best safeties in the NFL. Is he going to fall off just because he's 1 year older? No. I think that's a trope that gets used a lot. Like, oh, they're a year older, so they got to fall off. If you would have started saying Tom Brady's a year older, but he's going to fall off when he was about 35 years old, you would have it would not have worked out, right? It would not have worked out well. I think Tom Brady, if he still wanted to, he probably still could have played at a very high level. Age, all of that hits people differently. So, you know, I think it's crazy. I think it's crazy to factor that in unless there is an obvious issue, like with Peyton Manning at the end of his career. Peyton Manning could barely even hold the football. He could barely even throw. So, yeah, another year of that, another year, you can obviously see a physical deterioration where with players like Demario Davis and Tyrann Mathieu, you cannot. So Cam Jordan, great. Yeah, Cam Jordan was hurt last year. You could say, well, another year on, he might not be physically, may not be getting better. But we addressed that with Chase Young. So even that is one of those things where we addressed those issues. We addressed all that. Marshawn Lattimore, if you're like, well, it's a year, you know, he was hurt, he's been hurt, he's a year older. Okay, we drafted Kool-Aid McKinstry. Right? So those things right there where the Saints have made the appropriate steps to fix the holes. So if age is the reason we're not going to make the playoffs, that's a little crazy.
Get out Jamario Davis now that he's a year older. Is Marshawn Lattimore fully committed after all the trade rumors? There is a lot of questions, and if the defense can't carry them, then the offense needs to. And I'm not sold totally yet that this brand new offense is going to work. You know, it's hard to say so early. So right now, in my mind, it's not a playoff team, but because of the things I mentioned and how hard their initial schedule is. But, you know, that can change in training camp. So I sound super negative right now, but I'm more just being realistic.
Yeah, man.
That there are a lot of questions about the team.
Look, I'm right there. I am fishing for good things to say, Kat, because I know it gets to be a drag when you just only have bad things to say. But I feel like that's kind of been the course of this offseason. We'll see if it changes once they get to camp. She'll be out in California there at Saints training camp. She's Kat Terrell, ESPN.com. Thanks as always. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
There you go. I mean, again, I understand being hesitant, but I'm not. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not saying we're going to win the NFC. I'm not going to say we're going to the Super Bowl, but we were what people are saying we cannot be. We were that last year. Like, I mean, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. People are like, no way we can contend for the NFC South with Derek Carr and Dennis Allen. It's like, we just did that. We just did that. We lost on a tiebreaker. No way, man. The Buccaneers are way better than us. They were the same record as us, and we beat them at the end of the year. Like, well, I mean, you know, Marshawn Lattimore, is he fully there? Is Cam Jordan? He literally wasn't there last year. He got hurt, and we lost on a tiebreaker to win the South. Like that's what blows my mind. I am not saying we are guaranteed to win the South. I'm not saying we are guaranteed to go to the playoffs. What I'm saying is we are in the conversation. Like, we are right there with Tampa and Atlanta. Will we finish first? I don't know. But we will be right there in the conversation. We are the same as them. Only one team can win the division, just like last year. You know, there's a lot of variables of how it all shakes out. But to say, like, I don't see how this team can be a playoff team, just look at last year. That's how. You just fall into wins. Things happen. Division is weak. Some of the schedule is weak. I mean, we play the Giants, play the Commanders, play the Raiders, play the Broncos, play the Panthers twice. Those teams are pretty bad, right? What was that? Giants, Raiders, Broncos, Commanders, Panthers. That's six wins right there. Bucks once, Falcons once. You just win those games, that's 8 wins. Then you win one more game that you win the Rams game or win the Chargers game or wins the Browns game. Congratulations, you just won 9 games. And that's not even crazy. That's not even me saying, yeah, you beat the Eagles, you beat the Cowboys, you beat the Chiefs, you beat the whoever. You know, that's not me saying that. That's just me saying you take care of the teams you have to take care of, win a coin toss here and there. Boom. You're at 9 wins. 9 wins got you the division last year. 10 wins gets you the division. Okay? So that's how you do it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. Get on down in the comments below. I'll be down there. Thank you very much. I'll appreciate it. Always appreciate the support. And I will see you in the next video.